welcome to the movement. We're so glad that you joined us on the movement today. And I am your host, Lori Ann, the host and creator of the movement. And I say often that I created this space for moobs, for mothers of only boys, as well as those who know them and love them. Well, people who know and love them also include mothers of only girls, and I guess you would call them moogs, M-O-O-G-S. And what I like to refer to is members of the mob, which is mothers of boys who also have girls. One of those members of the mob is with us here today, and she has written an amazing book called Mothering Boys. So we would like to welcome to the movement today Molly DeFrank, who is here to discuss her book and discuss her views on parenting. And welcome, Molly. We're so glad to have you.
Hi, Lori, and thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I have to say that I spent some time reading your book, and I enjoyed reading it. And being a, let's call it seasoned mother of three sons, sometimes you think you know it all and you've been through it all, but that is not the case. And like many of our listeners out there, my sons are grown and married now, and I have 3 grandchildren. So much of what I read and what I learned from your book applies to me as a grandma, as a nana, not only as a mom. So I appreciated it on that front as well.
Oh, good. Well, thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk about the book a little. Let's talk about you personally. I'm wondering what inspired you to write the book.
Definitely. Well, we're raising kids in a weird time, honestly. The first book I wrote is called Digital Detox, the 2-week tech reset for kids. I wrote it right before this one. And in doing research for that book about how our kids' devices are changing them, are rewiring their brains, I started noticing the research and the data showed that boys were really being impacted by the video gaming in a way that I didn't think we were talking about enough. And I wanted to create a resource for moms that was packed with all the data, all the latest studies and information. And then along with, how can moms get in front of this when our kids are little, when our boys are young? Boys are so lonely. They're falling behind by every metric. Boys are 2.5 times more likely to be suspended or expelled from school. 70% of suspensions and expulsions from school are boys. In fact, if you look back at how men are faring and how young men are compared to the way it used to be, it used to be that women were behind when Title IX was passed in 1972. Women were way behind. And now that gap is way bigger, except it's young men falling behind. So it's larger in the reverse direction. Male life expectancy has declined. Men are vastly more likely to be in prison, to die deaths of despair. It was mind-boggling how much men are struggling. And the first and most important influence in a child's life, and a boy for today's conversation, is their mom. So I found, along with this really upsetting research, I found a lot of very effective ways to reach the hearts of our young sons and really just protect them from all of these effects of this world that they're growing up in today.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I think there has been let's call it a revolution for women, for young women and women, that, we are breaking ceilings and we can be whoever we want to be and do what we want to do. And maybe boys who need that nurturing are being left behind, because culture is just so important. I mean, we talk about biology, we also talk about culture. And our American culture, maybe we need a revolution for boys, because they really do get mixed messages in so many ways. And I think you're right. I think as moms, we are their first teachers. I actually want to backtrack a little and talk about your life and your family and how this relates. But I do remember reading that, you talk about intentional parenting and being an intentional parent and being a role model. And I think we are that intentional parent. We are that role model for our boys. And it's so important that we are intentional about our parenting and we give them the best possible start.
Absolutely. I agree with that. That's so true.
So tell us about you, about the author herself and your family and how you really got started in doing this. I know you had, you've kind of taken your parenting in many directions. So tell us about that.
Definitely. Yeah. I have 6 kids. I have 3 boys and 3 girls. 4 of those kiddos are biological. And then my husband and I adopted 2 through foster care. And it has been a wild ride. Just like you said earlier when we started, you think you know, and maybe if you're listening, you agree with this, but you have one kid and you think, I got this thing. I got this thing figured out. I just gotta, if you say this, then they will do this. And it's so easy. And then you just get humbled the more kids you get because you start to realize, oh, they're all wired very differently. So that's been my experience. We've also had older teenagers come and go through our home through foster care. So we've had a lot of kids in and out of our home that we've had the privilege of caring for. We live in California, and before I began having kids, I worked full time in Sacramento. I worked doing communications for statewide elected officials, including Governor Schwarzenegger. But yeah, I'm loving this life, raising these kids, keeping them growing and trying to address their needs. But yeah, it's my deepest joy to raise them up.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a wonderful job and you are spreading the information and helping so many other moms, which is really, really important as well. So let's talk about your book, this one in particular called Mothering Boys. And you had written in here that you had 8 critical things, you're highlighting 8 critical things that boys need. So let's go through them. At first I read that and I thought, 8 of them. Let me see if I can guess them without reading. And I came up with a few of them, but I think that you really cover all the bases here. So I'd love to go through them in general, and then maybe we can go through some specifics of ways that you've addressed them. So the first one you say is belonging. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yeah, exactly. Boys are lonelier than ever. Teenage boys, young men, they are disconnected. They are in large swaths, really just going online and withdrawing from society, and it's to their detriment. This is not good for young men. So how do we start? How do we get in front of it? And the key cornerstone here is just showing our boys that they belong in our family, that they have a purpose that they are called to. They have all been wired uniquely with different gifts and abilities and interests. And I believe that their purpose in life is to use those to share them with the people around them. And that starts in the home. So when we get to lay that foundation for our boys, that they are loved unconditionally, they're deeply valued, and they have a purpose in life. And it's not to sit on the couch playing video games forever. That's a culture, to go back to what you were saying, that it's our job to create. So I talk a lot in the book in the first part about how to do that. How do we impart this sense of value and belonging in the hearts of our boys? And one of those ways really is to make sure they understand that they're just inherently loved just because they're ours. So how much they're valued and loved doesn't change depending on their performance. They brought home an F. I love you so much. And there's going to be some consequences, or, just whatever it is. Of course, there's consequences, but giving them that foundation of there's nothing you can do or say that would change our love for you, and how can we unleash your gift? So one of the best and most simple ways really to do that, and I talk about this in the book in this section, is family dinner. And I know if you're listening, you're thinking, oh yeah, I've heard that a ton of times. But what's crazy is the effects that family dinner really have on the family. I found this family therapist that said, if most families just took advantage of sitting down 4 nights a week around the table, doesn't even matter what the food is. If more families did this, I would be out of a job, because most of what I do in clinic actually gets accomplished around the dinner table. It's so simple. And yet 60% of families don't take advantage of this hack. So, I really just encourage parents with with just very simple ideas, even on the car ride to school. And if you're a grandparent, this is something you can do too. I know moms and dads appreciate you so much being active in the lives of our kids, but just giving these kids a sense of connection and unconditional love and belonging, that does wonders in the hearts of our young sons.
Right. And what you say about dinner, I can hear a lot of the parents out there, a lot of the moves saying, but we have soccer and we have baseball and we have practice and we can't do dinner. You know what? Rather than say, we just can't do this, if this is something intentional that you think would help your family, it doesn't even have to be dinner. It could be dessert. It could be, we're going to get back from soccer practice and maybe we had our chicken nuggets on the road, but we are going to sit down, because really what it's about communication. So we are going to sit down 3 or 4 nights a week at before bedtime, whatever it is, and we're going to have a special treat and sit around the table without our phones in front of us. So adapt it however you can to make it fit in your lifestyle, depending on the ages of your kids, and whether we're overscheduled or not. It can be a side conversation. But I agree with you so much. I know even as a grandparent now, when I have my kids and my grandchildren under one roof, it's that feeling of belonging. It's that we are a unit, we're a family, we're always there for each other, and you want to instill that in them at a young age. So, and we should strive for, the ideal and then modify however we can.
Exactly. And you know what? Even if it has to be at the ball field, it's baseball season right now in California. The weather's great. I'm sure it's beautiful there too right now, where you are. But, even if you're at the baseball fields, one kid has practice and you just have 20 minutes between A and B, bring a blanket, grab some hot dogs from the, snack bar. It doesn't need to be complicated, to your point, and just make it happen. Just create. It's so simple. It just takes a little bit of intentionality.
Absolutely. And I think that let's go through this, but I think intentionality is really the motto here, because, we as moms have that role and have that ability to be intentional parents. And while they're young and in your home and growing up, we have that influence, which is wonderful, because when you get to be like me and your kids are already older, you look back and you say, wow, not that it's too late, you're always teaching them, but, the most opportunity you have to being as influential as you can is when they're living in your home and they're younger. So, you do it then.
That's so true.
And do it while you can. All right. The next critical thing you say is relationships. Little bit about what we covered, but let's talk about that.
Yes, definitely. 2/3 of young men say no one really knows me. 2/3. That's a majority of men who don't feel known by anyone. They feel lonely and disconnected. So this is a sign for moms to roll up their sleeves and give our sons the skills that they need to both cultivate and navigate relationships. So I talk about eye contact, and eye contact is something where this used to be a really basic thing a couple of decades ago, where parents understood, we just naturally, eye contact is a part of me talking to my kids. But now, because kids are spending so much time on their devices, we need to, again, be intentional about putting those away and getting that face-to-face time. And this really starts, honestly, from nursing moms. I read an article recently that midwives are being encouraged to tell moms when they're pregnant, to warn them about the health effects of even them being on their devices while they're nursing, because their babies are missing that eye contact. So it really starts from day one. Eye contact is where every bit of connection begins. Also, conversation, teaching our sons how to be good conversationalists. I mean, I'm sure we've all been stuck in a discussion with someone who is only on output, and how off-putting that can be. So it's our job to teach our sons to be good listeners and good contributors to conversation. There's also something really unique about, there's this MIT professor who called parental conversation. He said the effect it has on the brain, it's almost magical how it grows the brain. And that's just conversation, back and forth, talking to your kids. I mean, and this is what I wish I could go back and tell my younger mom self when I had, 3 kids, 3 and under, and you feel like you're drowning. But the fact of the matter is, every little sibling argument that you're refereeing, or every single time you ask your kid about this weird, piece of lint they found they're excited about, these are just, it sounds so tedious and it feels really difficult some days, but these things, these little tiny deposits in the minds of our kids, grow them into wonderful adults. So it's all about capitalizing on the things, and then also how to navigate conflict. Um, we want our sons to be able to grow to want to listen and respond and be peacemakers. So I talk a lot about that in there. I have a lot of conversation starters for parents if they're like, well, my son just wants to talk about Pokemon cards all day. That's kind of boring. I get that, but I have several pages in the book of great conversation starters for you and your young sons too.
That's great. And, I get a lot of questions here about boys in particular who, constantly give one-word answers and they really don't want to communicate. And it is a do as I do, and you're right. Again, let's be intentional. Let's go with the conversation starters. Let's not ask yes, no questions. Let's, think about what we can do to evoke that conversation. And when you said eye contact, one of the things that stuck in my head while I was reading your book was that I remember, and I don't think it was in this specific relationship section, but you said something about, I don't know if it was discipline or about going down to eye level with a child and eye contact before you were to, maybe if they were having a tantrum or you needed to discipline them, get down to them, look them in the eye, be calming, communicate, and before then you go ahead and tell them what the punishment or whatever will be. And again, that eye contact, that it's almost like you're saying without words, you matter to me. We're connecting one-on-one, which is really nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Next critical thing is authority. Tell us about authority.
Yes, this is so important. If you talk to teachers, or if you are a teacher today, especially if you talk to a teacher or you've been teaching for several decades, you will notice things have changed dramatically, to where it used to be that parents were backing up the teachers when a kid was being a knucklehead. And now the teachers don't have that kind of support, and kids are not really learning or being taught that they need to respect authority. And one of my favorite writers said, it's respect for parents that's the basis for every other kind of respect and every other kind of authority. So if we want our sons to be successful in life, that starts with really teaching them that they need to respect mom and dad. That's part of living a good life. If they're not respecting us, if they're talking back, or not facing consequences, then how are they going to do well in school? And beyond that, how are they going to hold down a job if they're not respecting their boss? So this is a really critical and basic component of raising kids today. And part of that is natural consequences. I love this Abraham Lincoln quote that said, the worst thing you can do for those you love is things that they can and should do for themselves. And, sometimes that hurts as a mom, because your kid forgets his instrument for the third time, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to let you get the write-up for that. You're going to get in trouble. I'm not going to rescue you. And until our kids really start to understand the natural consequences of their choices, it makes it hard for them to really respect what we're saying and the instruction we're giving. So yeah, I've got lots more in that section about waiting. Kids are not being forced to wait like we used to. When I was growing up, we didn't have a phone watching TikToks when we're standing in line or standing between classes. And so really, how do we put our young sons in positions where they can grow in patience? And that's all really tied in respecting authority.
Right. We do have instant gratification these days. If you have, a question, you don't go look it up, in 2 seconds, you have the answer. And even, as they get older, and even we as parents, if you watch shows on TV, you used to have to wait every week for the next episode. Now everybody binges these shows, one after another. So there is no waiting on anything, and we are all losing patience. And on that note, I will say again, so much of the parenting that my husband and I have always subscribed to is the do as I do, kind of not as I say. So, on that note, it's really hard as adults sometimes not to be on your phone all the time. It's really hard to have patience, but they're taking it all in, and everything that we do they are seeing, and we are the models for that. So another thing to just keep in mind as we go along our day. And easier said than done, but if you keep it in mind, maybe it's easier to model that. All right, next thing after authority is bravery.
Oh yeah, bravery. So, we have kids today that, and again, this is all, you might hear a common thread, which is just a lot of these kids, their culture is their device consumption. So because of that, so many of the problems and where kids are lacking is, it's downstream. So we talk about bravery, and kids are not, and boys in particular, are not taking risks like they used to. And taking risks, that's how you grow in courage and bravery. So, I really encourage moms to let our kids fail, let them experience failure, because when they do, they realize, hey, this isn't so bad. How can I do better next time? And then they start to realize, gosh, I learned something from that. So let them go through that process. That's how they grow in confidence. We all want to raise confident boys. Well, let them fail. Let them blow it. And then they'll grow in bravery. It's the cycle they need to do. And really at the end of the day, we want to increase grit in our kids. And it's that skill, that tenacity that will propel them forward in life. Whether it's going after the girl one day, the girl of their dreams that they want, or whether it's the dream job or finishing that really hard degree. These are skills we want to develop in our kids, trying something that they're not quite good at yet, and not being too afraid to be the worst one on the team. Like, these are good skills for our kids to have. And I think also, it doesn't help us in this Instagram culture, watching everyone's highlight reels all the time going, oh gosh, my kid needs to be better, better, better. But no, we know that we're meeting our sons right where they are, and that it's beneficial for them to try and fail and try again, because we're taking the long game view here.
Right. And the other part of that, I think, and I think I did read this in the book as well, but I think on my own as well, it helps to give your kids that solid foundation, that feeling of, I will love you no matter what. You can fail, whatever it is, and that goes for adults as well. It goes for everybody. When you have that foundation and you know that there's a safety net under you, you're so much more likely to be able to leap and take a risk, knowing, what's the worst that can happen? Mom will always be there. Dad will always be there for me. And again, like, not necessarily to do it for me, but, to give them the ability to take the risk and be brave.
So true.
Yeah. So
yeah, I think it's the author of Grit who said, as much as talent counts, effort counts twice. And I tell that to my kids all the time, because when they're working really hard for something, I just think that's irreplaceable. And if you're a business owner and you had two candidates to choose from, and one's a little smarter but doesn't work as hard, and the other guy works his tail off, you're going to pick the hard worker, right? Because that guy is going to deliver. Like, who cares how naturally gifted you are at something if you're not willing to work hard to use it? So that's really something that's important for us to try to develop in our kids, is that motivation.
Absolutely. And even if you do have the talent, it's important to work at it, because if you don't cultivate it, and you don't have that work ethic, you will not reach your maximum potential. So we need to teach that as well. Okay, next is tenderness. Let's talk about tenderness, because I think
yes,
we are raising boys in a culture where they are concerned about being labeled a mama's boy, about having feelings, about crying. And I know that research has shown that boys need tenderness, they need loving care, they need communication, they need nurturing. Not as much as girls, but more than girls do biologically. So talk to me about tenderness.
Yeah, definitely. And I see the culture probably going one of two ways about boys and tenderness. And as boy moms, as listeners, our boys, just like you said, they start out with these tender hearts and big feelings. And maybe for girl moms, they might think that boys are just naturally stoic, but no, and you can see it from when they're very small. They have sensitive hearts. And our job as moms is to show them how to process those emotions in a healthy way. So the way that I see culture going wrong is either we're telling our kids, yes, all the time. If you feel it, say it, be driven by your feelings all the time. That's not helpful. Like that's not helpful to anyone.
Right.
Sometimes you got to go about your day when you have a bad day. But on the other end of the spectrum, sometimes we're telling boys, no, you shouldn't have any feelings at all. Stifle those, men don't
Suck it up
cry, men
kind
don't
of
do
thing.
this.
Right.
And that's not true.
Right.
And in fact, I think part of why men die so much younger than women is that because they stifle those emotions. It's not healthy for their bodies. And, I'm a person of faith, and there's a lot of faith components in this book that I wrote. But one of the things I noticed when I was reading for this is, gosh, we can take so many examples from the Bible of good men, and the pinnacle of the perfect man in Christianity is Jesus. And you look at how he acted and how he responded. If you're a Christian, you believe that he never made a mistake. He's sinless, led a perfect life. And it's like, okay, well then how did this person who never sinned, how did he respond to his emotions? Because he had emotions. And you see that when his friend died, he wept in front of people. And it said that, he would have compassion on people, and he would be moved to action. And you see, that he responded to people in a way that he cried out in prayer. So I don't know if if you're listening, my views on religion, and that's fine. But either way, our sons need us to show them how to process emotions in a healthy way. And I think that really starts with wonder. I talk about that. When our boys are little, help them develop a sense of wonder about the world. Make sure that you're not raising boys who are too cool to think that a bird's nest with eggs in it and a mama bird isn't like mind-blowingly cool. Point out to them, look at the grass on the hills is changing as it gets warmer. Isn't that neat? Like, look at these birds flying. Look at where my dog's about to have puppies. Look at these puppies. Like, where did these come? Look at how many incredible things are in this world. And we're planting these seeds in their hearts to enjoy and appreciate the good things all around us. So
let's talk practicality a little, because I see in my 5-year-old grandson all of that wonder, and cultivate it all the time, and it's a joy, and everything is awesome and awe-inspiring, and it's great. They get older, and it's American culture, that machoism, that we need to be stoic, that we need to be the tough guys, and we can't show our emotions. So how do you all of this, that in theory is great, but how do you continue it in boys so that you kind of let them express their emotions, but somehow mold into this culture until we're able to revolutionize it and change it a little bit, so that, in an everyday life, we can protect their emotions?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And but I got one kid who is the one word answer kid and not super emotive. And I got another one who, when he was small, his emotions were big and everywhere. And one of the things I did that really helped was, hey, it's okay to have these feelings, but we don't need to show all our feelings to everyone. So let's find a place, like if you need to go to your room and just kind of let it out, pull it together, talk to someone. It could be me, it could be dad, it could be your brother. Like, let's process this. We need to talk about it. You got to feel your feelings. That's what they're for, is to feel them. But when you're ready, let's come out,
Right.
So
also sometimes books. I think books help as well. Like I know, if you have the right books for kids at their appropriate age level, and you develop a love of reading, a lot of times it's easy to communicate with your children through books and about books, whether you read them a chapter every night, they read to you, you discuss what they're reading, all of that kind of helps as well. And then gives them, like you say, that nurture time, that time to be able to express their emotions and their feelings.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up reading, because that is such a phenomenal way to expose our young kids to, look, people live in different places, people have different experiences, and it opens their hearts to compassion for the world around them and people who are hurting. So that's good.
That is a great thing. All right, let's move on here to creativity.
Yes. So, like I was saying, our kids, I believe, are each uniquely wired with different talents and gifts. And I believe that all of us are called to use those gifts and talents to share them with the world and to bless our neighbors. So it's our job as moms to identify those gifts and cultivate them. And it doesn't even need to be expensive. Like, I'm not talking about the most competitive travel ball teams and the most expensive sports equipment. I'm talking about, getting your kids outside, going on bike rides, seeing where they slow down, what they're into when they're little, exposing them to the kitchen. Bring them in when you're cooking, and what are they? Do they maybe have an interest in cooking and helping out in the kitchen?
It's interesting. We have
Bring them out for yard work. Let them really get creative.
Expose them to a lot of things. We have a series coming up here on the show called Beyond the Ball Field, which we address activities that moms in particular can do with their sons that don't involve sports, because so many of the moms have written in saying, I don't really have that love of sports, but I want to connect with my son. And cooking is one of them. It's actually the first in the series that we're covering in a few weeks. And it's a great opportunity to, be in the kitchen with your kids. There's so much that you can learn and communicate about cooking with your child. So I love that suggestion. I think it's a great one.
Yeah, thank you. And also, boredom is, our kids are not being bored. Kids' childhood needs to have boredom, plenty of boredom, because it's when your kid says, I'm bored, that's not a problem for us to solve. That's actually our child's creativity beckoning him to think of something to do in that time. So I think that's another kind of counterintuitive thing now, where parents feel like they need to fix that. No, don't fix it. Give your kids some ideas, provide some abundant materials for them to create. And then that's, again, where the self-confidence grows, and that grit and problem-solving skills and all those things that I know you and I did as kids. It's just a little bit harder to put our kids in those scenarios now, because there's so much digital entertainment everywhere. So it just requires a little intentionality, but it's doable.
Right. How important is it, before we move on to the next one, how important is it to try to solicit community and try to have other moms, other families join you? Because I know for things like, like the dinners you talked about, when everybody is everywhere at practice and this and that, it's difficult to tell your child, we can't go tonight, we have family dinner. But if you have other families that are doing the same thing and we're putting our foot down and we're, it really makes things easier. So how important is it to do that? And how do we go about that?
I think especially when our kids are little, it's critical to have that like-minded community. When they get a little bit older, when they start to go to school, we don't get to choose their friends anymore. We don't get to choose their community, but when they're small, we get to dictate that. So whether that's community from church or neighbors, I think it's really wise for parents to be thoughtful about who they're bringing into their community and who they're spending time with. I would also say being adaptable is probably the most important part of keeping me sane with a lot of kids and pets and all the things, because you're right. Sometimes there's a curveball and it's like, you just got to fly by the seat of your pants and adapt. So that's why, like you mentioned, family breakfast, cool. Family frozen yogurt outing, cool. Just creating little ways along the way that fits your life, just pockets of intentional deposits. That's kind of what we're talking about.
Right. And you don't have to do it all at once. And that's the other thing about being, we feel so compelled sometimes, especially because of all the social media, to just be that perfect parent. I'm going to, read this book, and then I am going to be intentional, and we're going to change everything about our lives because we want the outcomes to be great and perfect. Take it slow. One thing, do it one at a time. See how your family responds. Don't overwhelm yourself, because I think as moms, we are important. The most important thing in our role model in our children's and our children's lives, but we take it a little bit to heart too much and put enough on our shoulders that we cave. So happy mama, happy children. Take care of yourself as well, and don't take on too much.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. All right, let's move on here. After creativity, we have, I guess this is our last critical thing that boys need, which is emotional durability. What do you mean by that?
Yes, this one's so critical too, because you hear all the time about the mental health of girls declining. We hear this in the news all the time. Oh, girls' mental health is suffering. And it is. And that's a huge problem. But the only reason they're separating out into girls and talking about that is because there is a slightly greater mental health problem with our young women than for boys. The truth is that boys' mental health is massively declining as well. Like it's really bad, and it's this loneliness epidemic. So I wrote this about, helping our boys to be emotionally durable is going to help get them through the rest of their lives. So I talk about giving them language for their feelings, giving them the tools they need to express their feelings to us at the beginning, and then also helping them work through it so they don't feel weird for ever feeling sad or jealous or mad. Like, that's okay. Let's talk about it. How can we handle that emotion? And then I also talk about gratitude, because anxiety is on the rise. And anxiety, I've read this, that anxiety and gratitude can't really coexist at the same time in the brain, which is pretty cool. Melody Beattie said, gratitude turns what you have into enough, which I loved. So I have also in the book just a lot of really simple ways for parents to build a heart of gratitude in their kids. Just like you said, do as I do. Checking in sometimes around family dinner, we'll say, what's one thing you're grateful for today? Like you mentioned too, story reading can really help. I have a bunch of book recommendations in here too, to help just with simple stories you can pick up at the library to grow the hearts of our sons in gratitude. Writing thank you notes. There's just so many ways to help our boys here. And then the last thing I said with emotional durability, and I think this gets overlooked, how much of an impact the lack of sleep is having on our kids. I say students. I was thinking, I've been helping out at one of our local schools, and the teacher had pointed out to me, look at this, the kids were on break. And so many of these kids, they were teenagers, they were sleeping.
Mm-hmm. They're exhausted.
They were sleeping. They're exhausted. They're up all night, and
that comes back
on their
also
devices.
To that being overstimulated and having so much and going from place to place to place. It's hard to wind down at night. It's hard for all of us. So maybe they need to not take on as much. But yes, sleep is so important.
It's so important. And we, I think, take for granted the impact on our kids' moods. And, we might think, gosh, we got to medicate this. Are they bipolar? Are they, multiple personalities? What's going on? And it could be that they need more sleep. We had a child in our care at one point. I mentioned we've had a lot of kids come in and out of our home, but at one point through foster care, we had a child, and the psychiatrist told us, gosh, you know what? This kid is not getting enough sleep. And that was part of his medication regimen for this child, was a specified number of hours. He said, this child needs 11 to 12 hours of sleep every night because of the mental health issues that this child is facing. And I couldn't believe it. Wow, this is like the prescribed treatment for this kid. So don't take that for granted. That really does help our kids' emotional durability.
Yeah, for sure. And that really comes with, again, winding down, not overdoing, having time to communicate, maybe having a routine. Routine is always good for kids. Routine in the evenings, whether it be a snack, a book, a bath, a shower, whatever it is, knowing that you're going to calm down and be able to sleep. And get them to bed at a reasonable hour so that they can get their sleep in and get up for a new day, which is important. We forget about that sometimes. But think about us as adults. I know me, when I don't get sleep, I'm just not good for anything or anybody. And kids are no different. So they need their sleep probably more than we do even. So we have to make it a priority for sure. Well, Molly, I think this book is unbelievable. It's an intentional parenting Bible, so to speak. I think that not only do you offer advice, but you offer concrete examples on how to implement that advice, which is really important. And I really want to encourage all of our readers to get a copy of this book. It's available, I know, on a Kindle or an e-reader kind of thing. You can also get it a hard copy. Tell us where to find you and how to get your book and where to hear more about you and the other things you've done and will do.
Absolutely. You can get the book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I think it's on Target.com, Walmart.com, anywhere books are sold. And yeah, I would love to share parenting tips, simple hacks with you if you're listening. So you can also find me on Instagram. My website is mollydefrank.com.
Terrific. That is great. And we appreciate you being here with us. I think you have offered a lot of wonderful advice, solid advice to our moobs out there, our moogs out there, and our members of the mob out there, as well as everybody who listens in and loves us. And we really appreciate it. We also have 2 signature segments here that I'm going to go ahead and do. And Molly has graciously agreed to stay with us. And we will appreciate her input on these, I'm sure. And the first one is called Moob Mail. So here is our Moob Mail today.
Oh boy, it's that time. Ooh, mail's here. Your voice meets mine. From your heart straight to our trail. Let's open up that mail.
Okay, Moob Mail. This came from a young woman named Susie. And Susie says, "Hi, my name is Susie. I love listening to your podcast, and I have a question about my adult son. Is it normal that he still calls me to ask how long to cook pasta while he's staring at the box?" I think if he calls you, that's a good thing. What do you think? That's communication, isn't it, Molly?
Oh my gosh, I love the question. I love your take on the question. Yes, you're a mom, obviously, of grown boys, but I was thinking for my young boys, like, no, you guys got to read it. You got to read it. And you know what? For her son, like maybe it's not about the pasta. Maybe it's about wanting to connect with mom, and that's the excuse.
That's
You want to hear
exactly
his
what I
mom's
was going
voice.
to say. He's more than capable, if he's an adult, of
Yeah.
reading that box. And the fact
Yeah.
that he's reaching out to you, either he thinks your pasta is out of this world and he wants to make sure he does it the way you do, but most likely he's reaching out to communicate, which, there you go. That's exactly an example of one of the things we were talking about. So take it
Sweet,
and run
yeah.
with it, is what I say to Susie. Okay. For the sake of time, I'm going to move on to the next segment we have, which is called the Confession Corner. So here is our confession for the day.
Lean in close, have no fear. It's the confession corner, no judgment here.
This confession came from Rachel, and Rachel says, "I act annoyed when he leaves dishes everywhere, but if he's not home, I really miss the mess." I thought that was sweet.
Oh, that is sweet. I relate to that. You know, when all my kids are at school, I'm home for the first hour, you know, you're tidying up and then you feel like, oh, it's so nice. And then after a couple of hours, it's like, okay,
Time to come
come
home.
back. I miss you. I miss the mess.
Exactly. I think we have to really relish in the lives that we have when we have them. You blink and you're on the next stage. So rather than wish it away, just enjoy it. And when you have that minute of peace and quiet, it's a good thing. But I think that we have to love every stage and love the mess and embrace the chaos and do what we can to appreciate it. And as you said, be grateful.
Yeah, so true.
True. Okay, Molly. Well, this is the end of our show for today. I really appreciate you joining us. I think it was wonderful. And I think that everybody will enjoy reaching out to you in the future and listening to what you have to say and offer. And I hope they will go ahead and buy the book as well. And I do want to tell our listeners that they can, of course, find us on themovement.com and on our socials at Instagram at The Movement and Facebook. And We hope that everybody enjoyed the show, and we'll come back and listen again next week. And I will end, as I always do, by saying, hug your boys. Actually, Molly, before I end the show, we didn't really talk about demonstrative love, so I'm going to backtrack a minute. I think it's really important to hug your boys. I say it at the end of every show, and I think that, we're in a world where we don't necessarily touch each other and hug each other enough. So sometimes, whether it's a literal pat on the back or a big bear hug, I think it's an important thing, and I do end the show that way. What do you think?
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think physical touch, especially hugs from mom, it's just one of those building blocks. Our boys need it. We all need it. Our kids all need it. Yep.
Absolutely. I agree with you too. So, all right, now I will end the show and I will say, hug your boys and trust your instincts. And remember that where all boy moms belong is right here.